Documented patrol logs. Authentic visual evidence. Absolute truth. This is Bodycam incident reports.
I don't care if you have a key. You look like you haven't hit the showers yet. Step over to the public stall. I'm going to stand right here and make sure you actually use soap.
You just let those kids jump in straight from the court. Why is my hygiene the only one being regulated under threat of removal?
Because I said so. Now get under the water or you're trespassed.
The community pool at Sunridge Apartments was a massive, shimmering rectangle of over-chlorinated turquoise water, surrounded by expansive, heat-radiating concrete and rows of white plastic lounge chairs. On a Saturday afternoon in mid-July, with the temperature hovering at a suffocating, humid 95 degrees, the entire enclosed area was packed to absolute capacity. The heavy summer air was a thick, inescapable mix of evaporating pool water, cheap coconut-scented sunblock, and the muffled rhythmic bass of a portable Bluetooth speaker. Before we continue, hit that like and subscribe if you believe in real accountability, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from today? Officer Troy Kendrick stood like a sentinel by the heavy wrought iron entrance gate. He wasn't on a standard city patrol shift. He was working a lucrative weekend detail as the luxury complex's courtesy officer. It was a side job that allowed him to wear his dark navy, sweat-wicking department uniform, his heavy leather duty belt, and his badge while enforcing private property rules. He leaned comfortably against the metal fencing, his mirrored aviator sunglasses reflecting the bright, blinding glare of the water. He loved this specific assignment. It gave him the absolute, unquestioned authority of a beat cop, but without the actual danger of the streets. Here, he was the undisputed king of a gated concrete castle. The heavy thud of running footsteps echoed against the pavement. 3 teenage boys jogged up the winding concrete path from the nearby asphalt basketball courts, making a beeline directly for the pool entrance. They had clearly just finished a brutal game under the midday sun. Their white athletic shirts clung tightly to their spines, stained with dark gray rings of perspiration and asphalt dust. Heavy basketball sneakers left visible, gritty footprints on the hot pavement. They were breathing heavily, their faces flushed bright red as they wiped thick layers of grime from their foreheads with the backs of their hands. "Hey, Officer K, open up, man. It's absolutely brutal out here," the tallest teenager panted, not even bothering to reach for his resident key fob. Kendrick immediately relaxed his posture, moving his hand far away from his duty belt. He offered a wide, indulgent grin, recognizing the boys as the sons of some of the older, wealthier residents in Building A. He completely bypassed the security protocol, never asking to see their green electronic access fobs to verify they actually lived there. He also entirely ignored the rusted, sun-faded metal sign bolted to the brick pillar right next to his head that read, "Notice to all residents. County Health Code requires a full shower before entering the pool area." Kendrick simply pulled the heavy iron gate open and stepped aside to give them a wide berth. "Don't drown, boys," Kendrick chuckled. The teenagers sprinted past the officer without breaking their stride. They completely ignored the outdoor shower station located just 3 feet away. With a synchronized, echoing shout, all 3 of them launched themselves directly into the deep end of the pool. A visible, oily sheen of fresh sweat and court dust washed off their bodies, instantly mixing into the communal water where dozens of other residents were swimming. Kendrick laughed, letting the heavy iron gate swing shut until the magnetic lock clicked securely into place. Exactly 2 minutes later, Trevor Kane walked calmly down the same concrete path. Trevor was 32 years old, a senior IT systems administrator who had lived in a premium unit in Building C for 3 consecutive years. He was a model tenant who paid his $2,400 rent on the first of every month and had never received a single noise complaint. He was dressed in clean, dry, navy blue swim trunks and a crisp, perfectly pressed white t-shirt. Unlike the teenagers, Trevor had just stepped out of his own meticulously clean bathroom shower less than 5 minutes ago. His skin was clean, smelling faintly of premium cedarwood body wash. He carried a neatly folded, thick resort-style towel draped over his left forearm, holding his green electronic resident access fob loosely in his right hand. He was simply looking forward to 45 minutes of quiet, cooling laps in the water after a long week of managing server migrations. Trevor reached his right hand toward the black magnetic scanner mounted on the brick pillar. Before the plastic fob could even make contact with the reader, Kendrick's entire demeanor shifted. The lazy, indulgent posture vanished instantly. The officer squared his shoulders, shifting his weight aggressively. He slid his heavy black tactical boot directly in front of the gate's lower track. At the same time, he placed his right hand flat and hard against the vertical iron bars, physically barricading the entrance. Trevor paused. He looked at the hand on the gate, but pressed the green fob against the scanner anyway. The reader beeped cheerfully. The small LED indicator light flashed instantly from solid red to bright green, disengaging the heavy magnetic lock with a soft metallic clack. Trevor pushed gently on the iron gate. It didn't move an inch. Kendrick's tactical boot and rigid arm held it firmly in place, overriding the electronic access system with sheer physical force. Trevor looked down at the polished leather boot blocking his legal entry, then slowly raised his eyes to meet the officer's mirrored sunglasses. He refused to sigh or show a single flash of annoyance. As a black man navigating an upscale corporate environment for a decade, Trevor had mastered the art of maintaining an expression of absolute, neutral, unbreakable calm. "Good afternoon, officer," Trevor said smoothly, his deep voice carrying no trace of hostility. "Is the gate stuck on its track?" Kendrick offered no polite greeting. He looked Trevor up and down, his gaze slow, deliberate, and dripping with a heavy, unspoken, deeply ingrained prejudice. He took a slow sip from a plastic water bottle, swallowing loudly, forcing Trevor to wait in the blistering heat before finally deciding to speak. "The gate works perfectly," Kendrick stated. His voice was flat and hard, projecting just loud enough to make a nearby couple resting on their lounge chairs turn their heads to watch the confrontation. "But you're not going in." Trevor Kane kept his hand resting lightly on the iron gate. He didn't pull away or step back to yield his physical space. The green LED light on the magnetic reader timed out, clicking back to solid red, but Kendrick's heavy tactical boot remained firmly wedged against the bottom track. "I'm sorry, officer, I must have misunderstood," Trevor said, his baritone voice meticulously measured. He held up his green electronic fob. "My key authorized my entry. I have a signed lease for Unit 304. My rent includes full access to these amenities. Is there a localized security issue I should be aware of?" Kendrick pushed himself off the brick pillar. He stood to his full height, purposefully puffing out his chest to emphasize the dark navy uniform and the heavy brass badge. He hooked his thumbs into his leather duty belt, his right hand resting mere inches from the grip of his service weapon. "There's no security issue," Kendrick said, his tone dripping with heavy condescension. "There's a sanitation issue. Management has been getting complaints about the water quality. The pH balance is completely off, and maintenance is working overtime to keep the commercial filters clear." Trevor blinked slowly. He looked past the officer's shoulder at the heavily chlorinated water. "I fail to see how that involves me. I just stepped out of my own shower upstairs. I am completely clean." Kendrick let out a short, dismissive breath through his nose. He tapped a thick gloved finger aggressively against the rusted metal sign bolted to the brickwork. "Notice, all residents must shower before entering pool area." "I don't care what you claim you did up in your private bathroom," Kendrick stated, lowering his voice into a harsh, authoritative register. "I care about what I can verify down here. The property manager sent out a memo. We have to crack down on contaminants." Kendrick paused, tilting his head slightly so and the mirrored lenses of his sunglasses caught the harsh afternoon sun. "The heavy lotions, the thick hair oils, the shea butters you guys rub into your skin," Kendrick continued, his upper lip curling into a faint sneer. "That stuff coats the expensive ceramic filters in the pump room. It leaves a greasy film on the surface. It completely ruins the sanitary environment for the normal residents who just want to swim." Trevor absorbed the words in absolute silence. "You guys, heavy oils, normal residents." The dog whistles were deafening. Trevor felt a cold, familiar spike of adrenaline hit his bloodstream. He recognized the trap immediately. Kendrick wanted him to raise his voice or gesture aggressively. Any display of natural, justified anger would instantly be weaponized as a threat, giving the patrolman the green light to escalate to physical force. Trevor refused to give him the satisfaction. He immediately shifted his mindset from a resident trying to relax into a professional documenting a massive legal liability. Trevor slowly turned his head. He looked directly past Kendrick, pointing a single steady index finger toward the deep end of the pool. The three white teenagers who had just sprinted past the gate were currently playing a loud, splashing game of Marco Polo. One of the boys hauled himself out of the water. his back and shoulders visibly streaked with wet gray asphalt dust. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand, took 3 steps, and launched himself into a massive cannonball, sending a spray of dirty water onto the clean concrete deck. Trevor turned his dark eyes back to the officer's mirrored aviators. "Officer," Trevor said, his voice dropping to a low, icy frequency that cut cleanly through the background noise. "You just manually opened this gate for 3 teenagers entirely covered in dried sweat and basketball court grime. They explicitly bypassed the shower station, right in front of your face." Kendrick's jaw visibly clenched. The lazy arrogance began to crack, replaced by the brittle, dangerous anger of an authoritarian caught in a blatant hypocrisy. "Did you check their chemical makeup?" Trevor asked, his enunciation razor-sharp and absolutely unyielding. "Or is their sweat and dirt somehow chemically safer for your ceramic filters than my clean skin?" Officer Troy Kendrick's face visibly darkened. The lazy, authoritative smirk vanished entirely, replaced by a tight, rigid grimace. He stepped fully away from the brick pillar, intentionally closing the distance to invade Trevor's personal space. Kendrick hated being challenged, but he absolutely despised being caught in a flawless, undeniable trap of his own making. "Are you trying to be a smartass with me?" Kendrick demanded, his voice dropping into a harsh, threatening growl. He let his right hand fall deliberately onto the heavy leather holster of his service weapon. A classic intimidation tactic meant to silence any further debate. "Don't try to flip this around. Those kids belong here. I know their parents." "I belong here," Trevor corrected seamlessly, not yielding an inch of concrete. "I pay a premium lease for Unit 304. My key fob works. My account is current." Kendrick ignored the logic completely. The officer's ego had been bruised in front of an audience, and his immediate instinctual response was to double down and force submission. He raised his left hand and pointed a stiff finger toward the outdoor shower station, an exposed metal pipe and concrete slab set against the wrought iron fence in full view of the crowded pool deck. "Here is how this is going to work," Kendrick stated. "You're going to walk over to that stall. You're going to turn on the water, lather up, and rinse off. And I am going to stand right here on this pavement and watch you do it. I'm going to make sure you actually scrub those oils off your skin. If I'm not satisfied, you don't get in the water." Trevor stared at the officer. The sheer suffocating audacity of the demand hung heavily in the humid summer air. It was no longer just a discriminatory delay. It was a calculated attempt at public degradation. Kendrick was leveraging his badge and his gun to force a grown, successful man to perform a humiliating, subservient act under direct supervision, purely to satisfy a racist power trip. Several nearby residents had stopped talking. The couple on the nearest lounge chairs lowered their sunglasses, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Trevor did not break eye contact. He slowly lowered his gaze from the officer's mirrored aviators to the center of Kendrick's dark navy uniform shirt. Mounted directly in the center of the officer's chest was an Axon body camera. The small circular LED ring around the lens was blinking a steady, rhythmic red. It was actively recording audio and high-definition video. Trevor shifted his stance slightly, making sure he was positioned perfectly within the camera's wide-angle frame. When he spoke, he raised his volume just enough to ensure the microphone would capture every single syllable with crystal clarity. "Officer," Trevor said, his tone shifting into the precise, clinical cadence of a man building an irrefutable legal record. "Let me clarify your instructions." Kendrick scoffed. "There's nothing to clarify. Get under the water or turn around." "You just permitted 3 white teenagers, covered in visible physical dirt and sweat, to enter the pool without showering," Trevor stated, his voice cutting clearly over the background music. "You are now denying me, a black resident with a valid lease and key fob, entry based on the unverified assumption that my skin is coated in heavy oils." Kendrick's jaw locked. He opened his mouth to interrupt, but Trevor's baritone voice overpowered him without ever turning into a shout. "Furthermore," Trevor continued relentlessly, looking dead into the blinking red light, "you are ordering me, under threat of denial of access, to stand under a public shower and wash my body while you personally supervise the process. Are you stating for the record that this racially targeted degrading demand is your official lawful order?" The heavy legal terminology hit Kendrick like a physical blow. Words like racially targeted, degrading, and lawful order were massive red flags in any modern policing scenario. For a fraction of a second, a flicker of genuine hesitation crossed Kendrick's face. He knew exactly how bad that summary sounded. He knew the body camera was rolling. All he had to do was step aside, let the resident through the gate, and the entire situation would dissolve. But Kendrick looked around the pool deck. He saw the white residents watching him. His fragile authoritarian ego could not process the idea of backing down to a black man who had just outmaneuvered him with superior intellect and zero fear. Kendrick's face flushed a deep, angry red. "Oh, so you're gonna play the race card?" Kendrick snapped, stepping so close that Trevor could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You're refusing a lawful directive from property security, and you're creating a public disturbance. I'm telling you to leave the pool area right now." Trevor stood his ground. He didn't raise his hands, and he didn't raise his voice. "I am not creating a disturbance, and I am not trespassing," Trevor replied calmly. "I am standing at the gate of my own residence." Kendrick unclasped the leather pouch on the back of his duty belt. The sharp, metallic clink of steel handcuffs echoed over the hot concrete. "Wrong answer," Kendrick growled. The metallic clink of the steel handcuffs cut sharply through the heavy summer air. Officer Troy Kendrick gripped the double-strand chains, stepping fully into Trevor Kane's personal space. Kendrick's face was a tight mask of bruised authority. He had expected the resident to back down, walk away humiliated, or lose his temper and start yelling. Trevor had done none of those things. Instead, Trevor had systematically dismantled the officer's discriminatory orders in front of a dozen white residents, capturing the entire exchange in high-definition audio on the department-issued body camera. Kendrick couldn't let it go. His fragile ego demanded absolute compliance. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Kendrick ordered, his voice harsh and echoing off the brick pillars. "You are under arrest for trespassing and disturbing the peace." Trevor did not flinch or take a defensive step backward. He knew better than to make any sudden movements, well aware that even a natural reflex or the slightest tensing of his shoulders would be weaponized in a police report as resisting arrest. He simply let his clean resort towel fall from his forearm onto the hot concrete. He slowly, deliberately turned his back to the officer and brought his wrists together, resting them loosely against the small of his back in total, undeniable compliance. Kendrick grabbed Trevor's left wrist with entirely unnecessary force. He yanked the arm upward, twisting the shoulder joint just enough to inflict a sharp pulse of pain. A petty physical punishment for the verbal defeat. The cold steel of the cuffs bit hard into Trevor's skin as Kendrick ratcheted the mechanisms shut, locking them tightly over the bare wrists. The heavy click of the restraints echoed across the pool deck. The splashing and the loud chatter in the water completely stopped. The thumping bass of the portable Bluetooth speaker suddenly felt absurdly loud in the oppressive, awkward silence. Dozens of residents turned their heads. The three sweaty teenagers in the deep end treaded water, staring wide-eyed at the scene. They had just bypassed the exact same health code, yet they were swimming freely while a clean, rent-paying resident was being shackled in iron. "You had your chance to walk away," Kendrick muttered, his breath hot against the back of Trevor's neck as he checked the tightness of the cuffs. "Now you're going to the county jail." "For the audio record," Trevor said, keeping his voice projected and perfectly steady, speaking directly to the Axon camera mounted on Kendrick's chest behind him. "I am submitting to this arrest peacefully. I have not raised my voice. I have not threatened you. You are currently taking me into custody because I refuse to shower under your direct, armed supervision. A demand you did not make of the Caucasian residents who entered immediately before me." Kendrick gripped the center chain of the handcuffs, giving it a sharp, authoritative jerk. "Keep talking," Kendrick sneered, completely oblivious to the legal noose he was tightening around his own career. "You're just adding a failure to comply with a lawful order charge to the booking sheet. Let's walk." Kendrick shoved Trevor forward, forcing him to march away from the pool entrance and down the winding concrete path toward the complex's front parking lot. The walk of shame was designed to be publicly humiliating. Trevor was paraded in his swim trunks, barefoot on the scorching asphalt, past several ground-floor patios where his neighbors were resting. People pointed, whispers rippled through the complex. Kendrick walked with a heavy, arrogant stride, his hand resting securely on Trevor's arm, projecting the image of a brave protector removing a dangerous element from the luxury community. Trevor stared straight ahead, keeping his face entirely devoid of emotion. He ignored the dull, throbbing ache in his rotated shoulder. He wasn't thinking about the embarrassment of the moment or the stares of his neighbors. He was already thinking about his attorney. He was mentally drafting the exact email he would send the second he posted bail, calculating the devastating financial impact this unedited body camera footage would have in a civil rights lawsuit. They reached the front leasing office. Kendrick's dark Navy patrol cruiser was parked in the fire lane, the engine idling to keep the cabin air-conditioned. Kendrick opened the heavy rear door, placing a heavy hand on top of Trevor's head, pushing him down into the molded plastic seat of the holding cage. Kendrick slammed the door shut, sealing Trevor inside. The officer walked around to the driver's side, a smug, satisfied smile finally returning to his face. He had won. He had cleared the pool deck of the man who dared to question him, and he had re-established his absolute authority. Kendrick climbed into the driver's seat, completely unaware that the quiet man sitting in his rearview mirror was about to cost him everything. The harsh fluorescent lights of the 4th Precinct booking area buzzed with a low, annoying hum. Officer Troy Kendrick marched Trevor Kane through the heavy security doors, his hand still gripped firmly around the suspect's bicep. Kendrick wore a satisfied, arrogant smirk as he guided the barefoot IT administrator in his damp swim trunks up to the elevated wooden desk of the booking lieutenant. Kendrick pulled a folded citation pad from his back pocket and slapped it onto the counter. "Evening, Lieutenant," Kendrick said casually, leaning against the high desk. "Got a live one for booking: trespassing on private property, creating a public disturbance, and failure to comply with security directives at the Sunridge complex." The desk lieutenant, a 20-year veteran with graying hair and deep bags under his eyes, looked down at the paperwork. He then looked at Trevor. He saw a calm, shivering man in navy swim trunks and a t-shirt, standing barefoot on the cold linoleum floor, his wrists shackled behind his back. Trevor did not look angry. He looked directly at the lieutenant with the absolute, unshakable confidence of a man holding a royal flush. "Lieutenant," Trevor said. His baritone voice was polite, measured, and completely devoid of the usual panic found in the booking room. "Before you sign that intake form and officially assume departmental liability for this arrest, I strongly advise you to pull the last 10 minutes of Officer Kendrick's Axon body camera footage." Kendrick rolled his eyes, letting out a short, mocking laugh. "Don't listen to him, sir. He's been trying to play parking lot lawyer since I stopped him at the gate." The lieutenant didn't laugh. He had been on the job long enough to recognize the difference between a drunk suspect talking trash and a stone-cold professional laying a procedural trap. He looked at Kendrick's smug face, then back to Trevor's icy calm. Without a word, the lieutenant reached out and tapped his keyboard. He pulled up the live sync feed from Kendrick's Axon camera, rewinding the digital timeline to the pool gate encounter. He hit play. The audio from the encounter began playing through the small desktop speakers. It was crystal clear. "The heavy lotions and hair oils you guys use clog up the complex's filtration system." The lieutenant stopped typing. His fingers hovered frozen over the keyboard. "You're going to turn on the water, lather up, and rinse off. And I am going to stand right here, on this pavement, and watch you do it." The color rapidly drained from the lieutenant's face. He watched Trevor, on the screen, flawlessly point out the filthy, sweating white teenagers jumping into the pool. He heard Kendrick's racially charged dog whistles. He watched his patrolman demand that a black resident strip down and wash under armed supervision before executing a violent arrest, purely out of bruised ego. The lieutenant hit the spacebar, pausing the video. The silence in the booking area was deafening. He looked up at Kendrick. The lieutenant didn't see a proactive courtesy officer. He saw a walking, talking title, 42. Section 1983 civil rights lawsuit that was going to cost the city millions of dollars and drag the entire precinct into a federal Department of Justice investigation. "You arrested a rent-paying resident," the lieutenant whispered, his voice trembling with suppressed, absolute fury. "Because he refused to take a shower in front of you?" Kendrick frowned. His smug posture faltered. "Sir, he was violating the HOA health code. He was being insubordinate and aggressive. Take the cuffs off him," the lieutenant ordered. Kendrick blinked, completely taken aback. "Lieutenant, he was trespassing." "Take the damn cuffs off him right now, Kendrick," the lieutenant roared, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Or you are going to be the one sitting in a holding cell." Kendrick physically flinched. The arrogant certainty evaporated from his eyes, replaced by a sudden sickening wave of panic. His hands shook as he unclasped his leather pouch, fumbled with his universal key, and hastily unlocked the heavy steel bracelets from Trevor's wrists. Trevor brought his arms forward. He didn't rub his wrists. He didn't raise his voice to demand an apology, and he didn't gloat. He simply looked at the terrified patrolman who had just thrown his entire pension into an incinerator. "Lieutenant," Trevor said smoothly, adjusting the hem of his t-shirt, "I need your business card, Kendrick's badge number, and an official copy of my release paperwork. My civil rights attorney will be contacting the city's legal department at 8 a.m. on Monday." The lieutenant swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "Yes, sir. Right away." Kendrick stood frozen by the booking desk. The adrenaline that had fueled his power trip at the pool was entirely gone. He realized, with crushing clarity, that the calm, quiet man he had tried to humiliate was about to cost him everything. Instead of fighting back, Trevor just let an arrogant cop dig his own grave on high-definition video. Terrified of a federal lawsuit, the city and the complex settled for $450,000. Kendrick lost his badge, and Trevor bought a house with his very own private pool. So, what would you have done? Was Trevor's ice-cold silence the ultimate power move? Or would you have lost your temper right at that gate? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Hit subscribe for more instant karma, and I'll see you in the next one.
Our review is now complete. For more unedited field recordings, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Bodycam Incident Reports.